Director and animator Randy Myers tells the story of being rejected by CalArts twice before figuring out that he had to build himself a better portfolio. I was in Palm Desert, Randy says, working for a t-shirt company as their in-house designer, and I enrolled in art classes at the College of the Desert. The classes were good. They had lots of retirees in them, and the retirees took their art seriously. For Mr. Myers, the third portfolio was the charmed one, and he was accepted in the CalArts animation program in the early 90s. He stayed only 2 years, however, because he had loans to pay off and an industry of cartoons that he wanted to enter. Early freelance work at the Blue Sullivan Studios in Burbank led to an internship and then an animator's position at Turner Feature Animation and then Warner Brothers Feature Animation, where Randy worked on Cats Don't Dance, Quest for Camelot, and The Iron Giant. He counts his time on Giant as among the most rewarding periods of his career. After Warner's closed its feature division, Randy moved on to Cartoon Network and a long string of groundbreaking TV shows, everything from The Powerpuff Girls and Samurai Jack to Ben 10 and Uncle Grandpa. He's also directed at Nickelodeon, Disney Television, and a host of other studios. We spoke at the Animation Guild offices on March 13th, 2014. We're here today with Randy Myers, who's one of the pillars of Cartoon Network. And Randy, you're pretty much, after a long absence of these interviews, you're my first victim. So, especially of 2014. So what prompted you, because you've been in the business for 20 plus years,
Yep.
What prompted you to get get into the business in the first place? I mean, were you one of these 6-year-olds that said, ooh, Dumbo, I really have to get into animation? Or was there some other impetus, or did you just sort of fall into it, or were you always working towards it?
Not always working towards it. I was a fan of Dumbo and all that stuff, but unaware that people made those things.
You just thought they existed?
Yes, magically appeared on my television or at my theater. And it wasn't until high school where they kind of force you at some point to go, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? You have to choose something.
Yeah.
And they had a series of books in the counselor's office, and in browsing through them, they had something that was defined as, I think it was animation illustrator. It had some weird category to it.
You didn't do the Walter Foster art book?
Not at that point. I found those later. But that's when I found out, oh, you can make a living making cartoons, was looking through those.
Have you been an artist?
Well, yeah, if I went back as a kid.
Interested in art and all that stuff?
As a kid, yeah. I had an attraction towards drawing and doing art. But
okay.
As a kid, you're just like, oh, everybody's doing that. Because most kids do that. And then I was given, probably the major factor as a kid was I was given a how to draw book.
Yeah.
And I would copy everything out of that, anything and everything out of that. And I still have that book today. That cover is worn off it, but it's just one of like those. It's almost like the Foster books, but it showed you perspective and composition and shading.
And you were doing that from elementary school on, or were you?
Yeah, from like I don't know, maybe at least the fourth, no, maybe the second grade, because I remember doing a few projects in second grade, and getting some accolades like, oh, that's really good, and I'm like, oh, I kind of like that.
Positive feedback.
And I always got positive feedback from my mother growing up too, so that kind of helped.
Where did you grow up?
I was pretty much grew up in the Valley. I was born in Panorama City.
Oh, okay.
We lived locally for a long time. My parents moved to Washington State, so I spent a little time in Washington State. And then we ended up moving back down, and I lived in the high desert, which is just north of LA, in Palmdale and Lancaster and that.
Oh, okay.
So that's where I went to high school and graduated from school up there. But luckily, the other good thing about being up there is when I was in this counselor's office and found this description, one of the places listed that teaches about this stuff is CalArts.
And it's fairly close.
Yeah, it was like 20, 30 minutes away. So I was able to drive down the freeway and visit the school and was very interested. Now, unlike a lot of people's stories who are like, oh yeah, I found about the school and I was able to get in and great career, it took me 3 tries to get into CalArts.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I saw their description of what they wanted, and all I really had at that time was, art class projects. So yeah, I put together what I thought was a portfolio and submitted it and
They
got
went,
rejected. Yeah, and then I thought, okay, I'm going to try again. I went the next year and applied again and got the same rejection notice.
So now you're determined.
So yeah, I took a different course of action, decided I'm not going to reapply right away. I'm going to try to take some classes and do some things. And I had a period during that time where I moved to Palm Springs, and was a college out there called College of the Desert. And
Good
I know
name.
COD. But the funny thing about that area is you have so many people who are retired that the art program out there is really great. So for
A lot of retirees taking them.
taking painting and drawing, and that's really who filled up most of the classes, it seemed like. But it kind of worked because I had a lot of great classes out there where I learned a lot and changed my frame of mind of how to learn or what I need to learn. And then I even set up on the downtown Palm Springs sidewalk and did caricatures to build up the caricature part of what CalArts said they wanted. So I decided, okay, I'm going to apply one more time, and if I get in, I
Yeah,
get in, and if I don't,
Yeah.
some other avenue. So I got in, and sometimes there's a master plan, because getting in at the time I got in and amongst the people that I went to school
That would have
with,
been in the 80s, right?
1990.
That low?
Yeah. So I graduated in 85 from high school, and then I finally got into CalArts in the 1990-91 class.
Oh, okay.
And at the time, it was one of the largest freshman classes that they had. Then it was like 70 plus kids in the
Yeah.
class. Again, there was great people who were friends.
And you had a
with me.
couple of years of college before that, or 2 or 3 years.
That was
of
at
college.
the junior college I mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah, out in College of the Desert.
Yeah. So that helped, kind of grew me a little bit. I was a little more mature. I wasn't right out of high school, so that helped. And it turns out a lot of the guys I ended up going to school with also weren't guys right out of high school that had taken other avenues and done other things and then ended up
Yeah.
at CalArts. So
Musker was like that. He had
Yeah.
already graduated from Northwestern.
yeah, I had like John Ripa, who went on to have some fame at Disney as an animator and director. He was another one of those guys that took another avenue. Randy Haycock also was that way. Sergio Pablos, Gendy Tartakovsky and Robert Zetti. They went to Columbia in Chicago and then transitioned to CalArts. So I wasn't out of the ordinary to be where
It
I
wasn't
was.
you and all these 18-year-olds. It was you and these other people.
We had
your
a few
age.
of those 18-year-olds, but yes. So it felt more comfortable. It felt more even keeled.
Did you live on campus, or did you?
I did. First year I lived on campus, did that whole bit of business, lived in the dorms, and then second year I was off campus, living with other members of my class.
Like artists,
Yes, like we tend to do. We conjugate together.
explored the wilds of Valencia.
Yes, the wilds of Valencia, which it's such a weird contradiction up there. CalArts and Valencia just seem to an odd connection. But
Yeah, it's yin and yang.
yeah. But yeah, from there, I actually, between my first and second year, found some work because I was eager to get into the industry.
Oh, so you were working while you went to school.
My second year. First year, I had no idea that you could do that. But after going to school and talking to people, it became clear, yeah, you can. You don't have to have a degree to get work in this industry. You just have to have some talent or some drive or some determination.
Yeah, because way back, well,
Yeah.
actually, probably about the time you were there, they were pulling people out in
just
droves.
before I came, they were standing at the door saying, "Yes, we have work. Come work for us." There was a big recruitment.
Yeah, like the first year, second year, third year.
Yes.
All those things.
So I was able to, but I still wanted to go to school, so I took advantage of some of the freelance, and I worked on Looney Tunes, the Tiny Toon series, did a little bit of
Oh,
that.
yeah, so that would have been 90, 91,
Yeah.
92.
And then on I transitioned and did some work in the Bluth movies, doing some cleanup for them on things like Thumbelina and Troll in Central Park. So
Because they had a satellite studio in, I think, Burbank at the
Burbank,
time.
yeah. And that's where I would go and pick up and drop
Run
off.
by John Pomeroy.
Exactly. So that was kind of my first foray into the industry, was going through that. But CalArts was an interesting place. 'cause
What was it like when you were there?
It was it was creative, but what I always found interesting were we had a weird, kind of a wide range of teachers. Like there were some guys who were really into it, and some people who you didn't feel were really into it. They were there getting an extra paycheck, and the attraction of CalArts was always you're going to learn from people who are from the industry.
Yeah.
And that you have to be careful of because there's people in the industry who are really good at what they do, and some people who they're not that great at what they do, but they have a job. So
There's always those.
yeah, so Chris Buck was my second year animation teacher, which I felt very fortunate to have him. And the reason I felt very, very fortunate to have him is because my first year teacher, who I don't want to mention, he was not really an animation teacher. He wasn't really an animator, so it was
Yeah,
hard to learn
yeah.
something from him. I got what I could from him. Mostly we learned about stories about his career and less about actual animation. But then I got designers like Mike Giamo who got to teach us, so we felt very fortunate to have
Yeah,
guys
well,
like
Mike
that.
had been up there years before.
Right. Which him, Robert Lentz, there's a bunch of guys who were students who turned around and teach later on in life, which I ended up doing too, kind of to following that same path, a little bit of giving
Are you
something
teaching
back.
up there now, or
no,
are you?
no, I taught 2 years from about 2000 to 2002.
Oh, really?
So I was in that group. So about 10 years later, I went back and taught a couple of years. It's really demanding to do that, especially with a large class size.
And the class sizes are pretty big.
Well, when I was teaching, they split the freshman class, and I taught freshman animation. I had half of about a 60-something class. So I had about 32 kids in my class, and I taught twice a week at night. Normally the classes are at night or once a week, but since I was teaching freshman animation, they wanted it Tuesdays and Thursdays from 7 to 9, and it usually went from 7 to about 1 a.m. It's just so
You were up there until 1 a.m.?
yeah, and it was because of my experience when I was a student. I remember thinking, I'm paying how many thousands of dollars, and this is the education I'm getting. This is I expected more. So when I went back to teach, I wanted to make sure the kids got their money's worth, that they felt they got their money's worth. So at least for my classes. So I was okay if I had to spend more time
Yeah.
and talk to each kid and go over whatever they wanted to go over or talk about whatever they ever need to talk about, guide them. And in some cases, my classes didn't even talk about animation because we ended up going into portfolios because nobody ever talked to them about how to set up a portfolio. So I'd spend classes on that, and then I would kind of venture into boarding or layout sometime or composition, just so they felt like they got a better, well-rounded kind of
Grounding.
education. Because I didn't know what the other teachers were teaching at the time.
Did you find out as you went along?
Well, I found out where the holes were.
Yeah.
Because they would come to me and go, oh, what's this? Or I don't know much about that. And I would try to help fill in some
You
of
get
those gaps.
feedback from the students.
Yeah, the students
where
themselves.
where their gaps were.
Yeah, because again, at CalArts there was a day staff and a night staff. And you really didn't see too much of each other. So when I go up there, I'd see the few guys who would teach at night. And I didn't really have much interaction because they were teaching their classes. And then when I was done, I wanted to go home. So that's what was kind of tough. But it takes a lot out of you because it's not only long as far as hours, and at night you're finishing your day job and going up there and doing a second job twice a week. And then there's all the prep work that takes place getting
yeah.
ready for those classes.
You got to have a class
Yeah.
syllabus, and
Right.
you've got to have a lesson plan, and all
And
that
working at
good stuff.
getting the material ready, knowing what you're going to talk about, and understanding the whole school year and the arc where you want to start and where you want everybody to be at the end.
She did that 4 semesters.
Yeah, and the other tough thing about CalArts, which I was aware of going in because it was the same way when I was a student, there's such a wide range of ability and knowledge with these kids. Some of them have never been to school for this stuff before. Others have been doing something for years, have made their own films. So you're trying to create a syllabus and a lesson plan that will appeal
Yeah.
and be interesting to everybody.
You got to pitch that ball down the middle.
Yeah, it's really tough, and not lose any of the students along the way either, and try to be encouraging the whole time because a lot of it ended up being confidence. Like the kids just needed confidence in themselves. And the other thing that's amazing about our industry, the kids, and this is today, the ones who have the most ability don't always have the most success. Sometimes it's the ones who have the most
It's the
drive, yeah,
Sure.
determination. Because the ones that have the natural ability, you just automatically assume, oh, you're going to be successful. And that may be the case, but it's real surprising sometimes the ones who come out of nowhere who you thought, well, their stuff was okay, but I wasn't blown away by it, and they have their own show or they're directing a movie now or something like
Yeah,
that.
because what happened to them was they just,
Yeah, they,
they
were
usually
determined
have
about
the energy, focus, and drive. It's not enough to be a semi-genius. You've got to be able to drive that.
And Gindi and I talked about this before because Gindi told me a story about how he felt like he wasn't one of those, supremely gifted, natural, talented guys like other people around us. He said he felt like he had talent, but he always had to work at it. So because he had to work at it more, he knew, he understood it more, and he could explain it more. And that became important because then he could communicate to other people what he wanted. Whereas the guys who it came more natural to, if you asked them, why are you doing what you're doing? They couldn't tell you because they couldn't define it. They just knew it worked. And we found that, well, a lot of those guys who have natural abilities can't communicate what they can do or how to do
Yeah.
something to anybody else. But the people who had to work at it and experiment and try
Figure
different
out
things,
how they could get there
Yeah.
and why
those guys were great at going, well, this is why this works. Let me show it to you.
they could articulate it.
Exactly. So that was my kind of experience at CalArts. It was good. It was just very tiring teaching there. But I also, the other benefit there, when going to school there, you're sold on this idea of the people and the connection to the industry.
Yeah.
So when I taught, I wanted to make sure that that was there, and I would bring the kids down to whatever studio I was working at, give them a tour, introduce them to people, make sure that I was holding up my end of the bargain of introducing them not only to the art form, but the industry as well, and going, here's what you're going to be dealing with. And in the classes, I would tell them, here's what it's going to be like when you get a job.
When you're out there.
Here's how you should behave. Here's how you should act. Here's the kind of work ethic you should have if you want to get
Yeah.
noticed and move up.
Yeah.
They don't talk about that
It's
enough.
because the thing that I noticed is, in this job, is playing well with others is like fairly important.
Yeah.
And some young artists don't get that.
And we have a very unique industry where an animated project, whether it's TV, feature, internet, whatever, it's collaborative. Okay?
Yeah.
But it's also very isolating too. Your job is to come in, work on a project with a bunch of other people. But how you do that is you go off into your corner, you put on your headphones, and you do your part of that. So it's odd. You have to kind of be able to switch that on and off and be able to collaborate and communicate with everybody so everybody knows what everybody else is doing. But at the same time, okay, I'm going to click the switch now and just go and focus. And a lot of people have that problem just going and focus. There was always the jokes about chaining yourself to the desk, or so however you could do to make sure your butt's in your seat
Right.
and you're getting your job done.
Yeah.
You have to do that because otherwise you get the social butterflies who have a lot of talent.
But they never do any work.
Yeah,
I've known many of those.
Yes. Sometimes their talent is just flapping their gums and talking and BSing with other people. And then you go at the end of the week, well, what did you produce?
Yeah. That's exactly right.
So after I finished, I just did 2 years at CalArts.
Did they ask you? They probably asked you back, and you said, "I'm done."
What, for a third year? I just wasn't interested because of where I was at in my life. I wasn't interested in trying to get a bachelor's degree. I used CalArts more as a place to go and train
Yeah.
and get as much.
So you left before you matriculated.
I did 2 years. I made a film my first year. The second year I didn't quite finish. But the reason I didn't quite finish is because I was working and kind of preoccupied. And I thought, you know what, as much as the training is, as much as I like the training I'm getting at CalArts, I knew that I'd get more training and more real world training in the industry, which is what I did.
Yeah.
So I took an internship at Turner Features, and because they had just started up, it was all brand new, and a group of friends and I, we all got in, So that was my way really full-time into an in-house studio. Up
But
until
you
that
had
point.
freelance before that.
Up until then, I was just doing
I
freelance.
want to try and track
Yeah,
your entry into the industry, because you go from Palm Desert,
yeah.
that area, and you were taking classes to get into CalArts.
Yep.
Now, were you working out there at the same time? You had a day job? And
Yeah,
you were-
well, I did non-artistic jobs, and then through the school I mentioned out there, people would contact the school if they needed somebody to draw something. So would take jobs there. And then through a friend of mine, he introduced me to a buddy of his who owned a t-shirt company. And they not only printed, but they designed. So I went in-house with him and became his like in-house designer. And I would
Oh,
design.
so you were designing T-shirts?
Yes. So I was doing
That
designing.
was even before CalArts.
Right. But that's where I kind of continued that creative training, that commitment to, hey, you want to do this for a living. And I should mention another real important factor that happened is when I was living out there,
Yeah, yeah,
my mother went to like her 35-year high school reunion.
yeah.
She came back and she knew I was interested in animation. And she said, one of my classmates is working at the Disney studio, and I told him about your interest. He offered you a tour if you want to come down. So I went down, I got a hold of him, set up a time, came down to the lot, and he showed me around the Disney studio. And at that time, there was still a back lot. There was still an animation building.
Yeah, yeah. They were still on campus.
Yeah, they were on campus. The transition was happening though. The original animation building, the third floor had already been remodeled, but the first two
So
floors were
Eisner and
original.
Katzenberg were there.
Right. So I got to see that studio, and that actually had a big impact on me. That's when I went back to Palm Desert and said, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do whatever I can to keep a pencil in my hand and try to make a run at this.
Right.
And then take one more shot at CalArts and see what will happen. So that actually was an important, pivotal kind of moment for me.
Oh, yeah.
And then
Disney is a pivotal moment in a lot of people's
yeah, it has a big influence on
artistic,
me.
professional lives.
It's a little daunting too, but yeah, you need that push. You need something or someone to kind of push you to go and do that. And that's what that visit did for me. It pushed me to get serious about a career in art at some point. And then I was fortunate enough to get in.
So then your second year at CalArts
Yeah.
is when you started freelancing in the business.
Yeah.
First year totally focused
Well, actually,
on
that whole
CalArts.
summer after my first year, I was doing freelance to pay bills.
So were you working at Blue Studio then?
I was pulling work in from Bluth at the time. I'd drive down, pick up my work, go home.
So you were
do
doing
it.
breakdowns and in-betweens and like
I was
that?
doing cleanup.
Cleanup?
Yeah, I was cleaning up other people's animation, just putting a nice clean line on it, without trying to lose anything.
The
But
Sullivan Blue Studio in Ireland.
yes,
You were working at their satellite in Burbank.
correct, with the Pomeroy one.
So that lasted all summer?
It lasted all summer, and yeah, it lasted all through my next school year, and then, like I said, I was fortunate enough to do the internship at Turner at the time.
So that happened at the end of your second year?
Yes.
right?
So I took them up on that, and then that was my entry into feature film
Now,
animation.
did you have any intent on going back for a third year when you were doing that internship?
I don't think so.
Or were you in the,
No, a couple reasons. One, where I wasn't 18 and right out of high school. I had bills that had accumulated, so I wanted to make money. But also, I didn't want to rack up another full year of tuition from CalArts, which was a 20 plus at that point. So it's expensive. And so I had student loans I had to pay off, and I didn't know, like, okay, what I had to justify. What is it going to
Yeah.
get me to go another year?
so you getting into the businesses, there's a practical side to
Yeah.
it, you know. I've done 2 years at CalArts. It's time to start paying bills.
And the education that you get at CalArts is good. I mean, it's progressive. You do learn during that period. But once you get a job in the industry, the curve turns more like this.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like you have to learn it. Somebody comes to you and says, do this, you figure out a way to do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Or you find somebody who can help you figure out a way to do it. So it pushes you a little
Training on steroids.
bit. And the people who keep up with it do well. If you have the right mindset, the right work ethic, you'll do well. And the people who don't, who give up, I don't feel bad for them. Go and find something else and get out of my way. I don't want to compete with you.
Right,
It just,
right, right.
that was the other logic too, which is I'm going to be more determined than the next person to learn what I need to learn.
So you
and
had
do it
figured
together.
out there was a big aspect of focus and drive.
Yeah.
And
And the people in our industry are really, for the most part, pretty nice. And if you go and talk to them and ask them in the right way, people will help you. People
Yeah.
will teach you. People will show you. It's a very encouraging kind of industry. So I found that's how I started my network, which was talking to people and asking people stuff. And again, people are very nice, very accommodating.
so you got, your first animation gig was on Cats Don't Dance, wasn't it? Or was it?
The first time I animated was on Cats. I was doing cleanup on the Pagemaster, and then on Cats Don't Dance.
Yeah, Pagemaster.
Right. So Pagemaster, which was that 2D and then live action combination with Macaulay Culkin movie.
Yeah, 75%
Yeah.
animation and
Joe
about
Johnson
25%.
directed the live action.
So what was your experience on that? Were you down at the H&B?
We were next door to the Hanna-Barbera building, yeah. Which I thought was kind of cool. They put us in a building that was just an office building, but we had access to the H&B building, which has a lot of history. So it was nice to be able to walk over there and look at the characters on the walls.
The good
and
old
stuff.
days.
Yeah, and see all the old avocado green moviolas and stuff in editing bays. Those were kind of cool. That had been around since the '60s. But yeah, even Turner was an interesting thing because it was new, but it had a lot of people who had worked on other things, Disney and Bluth shows. So I got to know a lot of diverse kind of talent
Yeah.
there. And then they only had a 2-year or two picture run, and then they got absorbed by Warner Brothers. And Warner Brothers extended offers to most of the staff. You'll laugh at this, and most people who hear this will laugh at this and think, what a knucklehead. So I had two options after Turner ended. One option was
And you had moved up to animator on Cats Don't Dance.
Yeah, so I was an animator by the end of Cats. I got to work on Cats. I got to work with a fun crew because I worked on the supporting characters, which was the turtle, the fish, the goat, the hippo, the elephant. So it was cool that you got to work on multiple characters. And then I got to work with like Bob Scott and Kevin Johnson were our leads. So they're good guys with comedy too. They like loose stuff. So I got to not be too strict with the drawing, and I got to have some fun with the characters. And Mark Dindal, who directed that one, he likes that idea of the looser,
Yeah.
more
He's very cartoon
WB
oriented.
kind of style. So I enjoyed that. But then my opportunities that I had immediately following that were I go to Warner Brothers and work for Quest for Camelot, which seemed interesting at the time because Bill Croyer was the director at the time.
Right, at the beginning.
At the beginning. And I'm like, oh, I like Bill, I like that stuff. And then there was an animator on there who was really great that a mutual friend introduced me to, and I was going to get to work with him, and his name was Dan Wagner, who's a phenomenal animator. And then my other option was, Pixar flew me up and showed me around and wanted me to come up there and work on Bug's Life. So out of the two, the Warner Brothers was
Quest for Camelot or Bug's Life.
right. So Warner Brothers made me a really good offer as far as salary and signing bonus, and the Pixar offer at the time was less money with stock options. So being kind of the knucklehead that I am, or was, or maybe still am, I thought, I'm going to take that signing bonus and that better salary, and it's Warner Brothers, it's a bigger company, right? I don't know about Pixar; they just had one movie at the time or something.
Yeah.
So-
Toy Story.
Yeah, I could have been retired by now, basically, if I'd made that move up north. But
Yeah, and they were desperate. The thing about Pixar at that time, they were desperate to have people come up.
yeah, they weren't in the current building. When I visited, they were still in the warehouses that they originally started in.
Yeah.
So, and they had like dogs running around in the hallways, and yeah, it was kind of silly. But who knew?
Well, you're not prescient. No, none of us are. We
Yeah.
cannot foretell the future, and we make the decisions we make.
Yes.
You've probably reflected on that
I-
from time to time.
And I just think I have a good story now, which takes me to Warner
A
Brothers.
sad reality, but a good story.
Sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones you learn the most from.
Exactly.
And Warner Brothers actually turned out to be that same thing because Bill left the production.
And you got Frederick Duchow.
Yeah, we got Frederick Duchow. So it didn't end up, that particular movie didn't turn out the way I would have liked. The movie itself didn't turn out the way I think most people would have liked. It wasn't their proudest moment. But then you had the other side of that coin. The people who stayed on that and stuck around got to work on Iron Giant right after that.
Right.
So it was real interesting seeing the same studio in these two different productions with these two different directors with different personalities, different approaches. So again, it gave me good stories now because I can pass these along to other people. I'm like a lot of the other older guys in animation. I'm building stories as I go along in my career.
As are we all.
I saw Quest, which the studio was really behind, pushing it, promoting it, and all that stuff. And I thought, that's great. Well, but the movie really isn't that good. Okay, so I'm learning from it. And then I saw the director's style at that time. And here's a young guy who was put in this position. He's trying to take advantage of it. He doesn't really know. But in observing his approach and then seeing the complete opposite approach that Brad Bird had, what
What were the differences?
Well,
Detail them for us, will you?
insecurity. That's what it came down to, is insecurity. On Quest, our director time was the animator going into the director's office and the director pulling up our scenes on his computer at his desk and then looking at us, giving us notes, and it was like talking to the principal. That I thought was odd. And I thought it was more odd until when I got to Iron Giant, and Brad had...
What's the European sensibility?
Maybe. Well, you know what it was is, again, it's the insecurity thing. Here's a young guy, and I see it now today with kids who run their own shows too young. They feel like they have to have all the answers and have to know everything. They don't realize that their strongest and best asset is their crew.
Yeah.
Lean on these people.
Yeah. Delegate.
Yeah.
A
delegate,
lot of people don't like
ask,
to delegate.
or just listen. It amazes me, and again, it's not until after the fact that you realize this. But I saw him, and I saw him like he in the meetings would try to act and sound like it was his way. He knew this would be best. And in the end, the end product is really the proof of it.
Was what it was.
Yeah. But you don't really appreciate that until you see like a Brad Bird.
Now, what did Brad do?
So Brad's a guy he's very energetic and very smart and enthusiastic. First of all, his enthusiasm is infectious. He spreads it throughout the entire crew. On Quest, the directors, you couldn't tell if he was having a good day or a bad day. He just wouldn't let you know that. Brad was always upbeat, at least around us. I know he probably had some difficult times dealing with Warner Brothers and the executives at the time.
Sure.
He didn't bring that to us. The only time that would filter to us through him is when he wanted to try to prove something to them. And he would come to us very much like a coach in a halftime locker room and try to get us all rallied and hyped up and ready to go back.
We're going to do this!
Yeah. No, it was like that. And he created community really within the production. So he would always have the crew as much as possible together. The director time was an open affair. It was a big room. Anybody was invited. You could be an artist, you could be a production person. You
So
could
it
come.
wasn't just one-on-one.
Not, and then when you see that, you realize how valuable it is. He would have what we called his brain trust, which was his 2 or 3 guys that he really trusted, always there. But then everybody else was there. And even if you weren't there contributing, either showing something or saying something about what somebody has shown, you got something because you could hear Brad comment about somebody else's, and you would be able to take that feedback and go, oh, well, that was very smart. I'm going to do that, or I'm not going to do that because he didn't like that.
Right.
So you could get something out of those open sessions, which was great. And I think it saved time. It built enthusiasm. It got everybody vested into the project too, because you got excited when you saw some other animators scene. You're like, oh my God, that's really good. I'm going to step up my game and try to do something as good or better. So just that alone is enough of a reason. The big thing that I saw happen that was amazing was an accident, like you hear about a lot of times in successful projects or careers. The way we used to show the scenes where we would take a computer, feed it through, show it on a projector, and it would project on a pull-down screen.
Right.
Well, one day, for some reason, that pull-down screen wouldn't come down. So some, smarty pants said, why don't we wheel in a dry erase board and project it onto there? And then Brad said, that's genius because now I can draw on the dry erase board and show you exactly what I want you to do. And he would do that. He would stop the scene at the frame and he would block the light and draw the character and go, this is the expression I want. And you left knowing exactly what your director wanted. And it was like that in all the director times from there on out. He would just put it on the dry erase board. And then his brain trust was also there in case Tony Fucelli or somebody want to go, well, I don't know, how about doing it like this? And he would draw what he was thinking. Perfect, there you go.
So now that's also on the dry eraser board.
Yeah, and you knew again. It wasn't like, I think this is what he wanted. You knew exactly what they wanted you to go back and change. So that was fantastic. And again, it was just one of those accidents that happened. So Iron Giant, and Iron Giant 2 was exciting because we had a lot of people in the animation community at that time felt, well, I don't want to work on a movie that's a prince or princess and it's a musical. And Brad was of that same mind where we want to try something different.
Right.
Why can't an animated movie move you just as much as a live action movie without a king or queen or prince or royalty, songs and dances and all that other stuff? He just wanted to make a heartwarming story. And he's done, I think, a ton of interviews about what attracted him to the project.
Yeah.
But being in the middle of it, it's really cool because you got to see this thing evolve, this, sweet little story, which isn't so different from other sweet little stories like E.T. and such, which is a boy and another creature and other, different worlds and stuff. But I also saw the unique challenges that came from that particular movie, which was Brad really likes widescreen, and you have a small character and a tall character. How do you get them into that frame? And the board guys, the guys doing storyboards, compositions, they worked out some amazing compositions that worked beautifully. The art direction, how to come up with that color palette for that world. This made-up kind of Maine, New England-y type town. And then the style, the animation style that we ended up coming up with watching.
It was interesting.
Yeah, guys like Mike Wynn.
I always thought that if that movie, I remember seeing that movie thinking, this could be a live action movie with an animated robot.
Yeah. And nowadays you could do
CG animated robot. Today you couldn't do it then.
Couldn't do it then. It was right on the brink of that, but you're not really. I forgot to tell you how Brad really wanted to set up the units differently. In the what most people know of in animation is you have a lead animator who's cast on a character and a crew that works underneath them.
Yeah.
Well, Brad's hope was, it didn't quite work out this way, but he wanted to do units. So you would do a sequence. So there was a unit that would be in charge of this entire sequence and all the characters within it.
Right.
And then this unit that would be in charge of this sequence. The only problem with that was the inventory. We couldn't get scenes approved through storyboard and through the lot at the time to have a backlog of inventory to give it that way. So we would get spots here and there. We still had a unit that I worked on with a lead director that I answered to, and there were still people who were in charge of specific characters that if you had a scene with that character, they had to see it to make sure it's okay. So that would have been great to just say, yeah, we worked on this entire chunk. But the stuff that I worked on is like spotty in and out of the whole movie, which isn't terrible, but it would have been
So you
nice.
worked on a lot of different sequences.
Yeah, we worked on all different acts in the movie and many different characters. The only character I don't think I worked on might have been the giant, because I didn't do any of the CG stuff, but almost all the human characters, to some degree, I did something on them.
Yeah.
Some more than others.
How long was that whole production? About a year? Year and a half?
It was about a year and a half, yeah. But again, seeing the battles that Brad had to fight with the lot on, it amazes me today. And then I don't think anybody fights with him now. You just listen to that guy. He knows so much. He's a very smart guy. But again,
Well,
it's security.
also now that he's got this towering track record, people come to him and listen. They don't argue.
And speaking of listening, that's an interesting thing because that's what I took away from him as a director is he listens to people. Now, the security thing is there. He's a secure person, so he can listen to you. He'd listen to a PA. He'd listen to, Tony Fucelli or Dean Wallens, these guys who he held in high esteem, or Jeff Lynch. If they had a thought, he'd listen to them. And you couldn't tell if he was listening to the PA or one of those guys because he took it all in. And then he would process it. what's best for the movie, what he thinks would work best. And if he thought it would help the movie, he has no problem going, okay, it's a good idea.
Yeah, yeah.
But if he didn't, he could actually articulate why it maybe not have been best. He wouldn't make you feel bad about it,
Yeah.
but he would, no, I think we're going to go this way. But you never felt bad about or intimidated about saying something to him, which was
Yeah.
made it a better environment to work in.
Yeah.
So yeah, I took a lot of positive things away from working with Brad and his process.
So your early career arc, you were basically on feature,
Right.
feature. And at what point did you segue into the TV area of animation?
Right after Iron Giant. So we finished I left Warner's mid to late October, and then I was figuring out what I was going to do next. The feature industry was transitioning more to 3D.
Right.
Iron Giant was 2D, with the exception of the giant and some of the vehicles. And so I was kind of at a crossroads, where do I want to go? And at the time, I was fortunate enough to have a couple of friends who've had some success in television,
Yeah.
which were Gendy Tartakovsky and Craig McCracken. Gendy had a successful show with Dexter, and Craig was in his about second season of Powerpuff, and Gendy was producing that. And they were very kind to see if I would be interested in coming over and working on the show, which I took them up on. And that transition was, clunky because I had only done features. So Gendy and Craig both, mostly Gendy, had to show me, no, this is how we want this process to run. This is what you need to do.
So what were you doing?
I was doing timing and
So
directing.
you were directing.
Yeah.
You were an animation director.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't think you segued into boards.
No.
You've done boards. but
I've
I
done
mean,
some
yeah.
boards, but this was segueing into directing, which kind of made sense. I mean, I didn't know it made sense at the time, but since directing in that process was more about timing, it helps if you've actually done animation, which is what I was just coming off of. So then you know what it feels like if something's moving in 8 frames or 4 frames or however long an action is
Right.
going to take. And a lot of people don't understand that that's what's real important. Some people are directing who've never animated,
Right.
and that's odd to me that you can do that because you're kind of just taking a guess at it at that point,
Yeah.
or using a formula that you've learned for timing. And again, Gendy had to work with me a little bit, so I understood the timing of Powerpuff at the time. And then I think I got my feet underneath me when he started Samurai Jack, and I got to transition onto Samurai Jack, and that was interesting because Samurai Jack had, even though it was stylistic, it had a wide range of timing. It was more, it's close to, I think, theatrical as we could as far as some of the sequences that we did that were action and some that were more acting for television. So Samurai Jack was probably the most fun I had working on a television production as a whole, in product, the process and everything, and the people we worked with. So we all had a good time on that. And that
So
was a
you-
challenge too.
You got your feet wet with Powderpuff Girls, and then you got your feet under you with
Samurai Jack.
Samurai Jack.
Yeah. And then
You
I
think-
kind of understood what,
Think it helped to be there from the beginning of that show?
from Samurai Jack, oh, absolutely, yeah. And again, a lot of the crew that were on, that worked on Powerpuff transitioned onto Samurai Jack, so everybody was a pretty close-knit group. That also helped. Because unfortunately, as you know, in our industry, people get scattered to the wind at the end of a production, and then you're trying to put together a crew. And it was fortunate for us that we got to transition pretty much the whole crew.
So what was your big takeaway from Samurai? Did you have one about
Well, Samurai was interesting.
timing style, about
Well-
putting the show together, that kind of stuff?
Again, we had some guys like Craig Kellman doing designs, and I was just always blown away by Kellman's designs. When a packet would come in that he did, it was funny. We'd all gather around like a kid at Christmas looking at the pack, just marveling at some of the stuff. And Lynn Naylor was the same way. Dan Kroll, just the level of talent on Samurai, looking back, blows me away. Some of the people like Andy Soriano who did designs, Scott Wills who was BG, he was the head of background on the show. He has a bit of a reputation for being a very serious person, but man, the guy he knows his stuff. And so again, Samurai Jack was great because the contribution of everybody really showed up on the screen.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'd say that show had a big impact just for its timing and style, and the approach and all that. That lasted 3 seasons?
No, we did more than that. We did like 5 seasons.
5 seasons?
Yeah.
5 seasons?
And that was an uphill battle too, because it wasn't a huge success, commercially. Critically, it got a lot of acclaim, but it had trouble finding its audience. I don't think Cartoon Network really knew who to gear it towards at the time. But I think, again, after the fact, you look back and other people talk about it, how much they enjoy the show, and they've, like many things, they found it in other avenues, on DVD or online or someplace,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
on Netflix. So
And they keep making, there's all this, there's been talk off and on about making a live action
yeah.
version. And,
that's been going for some time.
yeah,
Who knows if that's ever happen? Maybe with Gendy's success and features, that
they'll
could
segue
happen.
into directing Samurai
Yeah.
Jack.
But yeah, Samurai Jack, and then getting into Cartoon Network, and then realizing you could work on more than one show. So I kind of spread the net and would work on many shows at Cartoon Network during my time there.
Yeah,
But then I left. I had worked on Foster's, I think was the last show in that run, and went off to try my hand at other studios and doing other things. Went to Disney. Disney put me up in New York for a year to work on a project there. I had then I learned about the politics of Disney at the time.
well, you were at TV, right?
Disney TV. There was a big battle between the person running Disney Channel and Disney TV Animation at the time. There was a bit of a power struggle, and
Well, there was a change there, and I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know what period you were there, but they went. Disney TVA originally was underneath feature, and then it
swung out.
swung over and became part of channel,
Yeah.
and the whole pipeline and
There's
power structure
always seems to be a
changed.
power struggle at Disney. Everybody wants to be in charge, and the project that I was on in New York at the time, unfortunately, was under the person who lost the power struggle at Disney at the time. So the project I was on got nixed, and then I ended up moving back.
And Gendy was on that too.
No, Gendy, he had around that time he had ventured out, and he was doing other things. He had signed a deal to partner up with the Orphanage, which at the time was
Oh,
a
yeah,
commercial house out of San Francisco. They did effects for live action movies, and they were starting an animation division, and they approached Gendy to head that division. So he was off doing that stuff at the time.
And that lasted about a year and a half, 2 years.
It,
wasn't it?
about 2 years. It had a run on it. It was a little bit rocky. They did a few things, but nothing ever permanent. And he developed feature ideas and pitched them around. And I think that was an education for Gendy about the politics dealing with features from all the different studios. So again, where he's at now,
So now
he's
he's
probably in a better
over at
situation
Sony.
now because of but he's better equipped now to deal with the people he's dealing with because of all of the headaches I think he went through back then.
Yeah. I heard all of the secondhand stuff of
Yeah.
the tug of war over Hotel Transylvania and
You'll have to get him in here because I've heard the stories, but they would be secondhand.
yeah, it's so
I
fun.
love hearing the ridiculousness of the entertainment industry and
Oh yeah.
how things get made and done.
Oh, yeah.
And he has a number of those.
Well, he's learned how to negotiate the shoals.
Then there's something to be said in our industry. There's a lot of people, again, who have extreme amount of talent, but not very much patience. And there's fewer who can straddle the fence between corporate and artistic. Gendy and a few others, I think one of their strongest assets are they are able to do that. They can go into a boardroom
Yeah.
and they can talk the talk of who they need to talk to
Yeah.
there and not insult anybody
Yeah, yeah.
or demean anybody.
Yeah.
And then they can cross over and go into the storyboard room and they can talk to the artists and their designers and stuff and be on the same level as them. It's very few people that can straddle that fence and balance it.
Creative
Yeah.
management.
So I saw Gendy.
It took Brad a long time to,
Yes.
because I was at Disney when he
When he was a youngster. Yeah.
got chucked out of there. He'd run up and down the hall screaming, "This place is screwed!"
Right. And there's still some people doing that today, and maybe they'll come to that.
They're
real-
the Brad Birds of 2004.
Well, you hope they're the Brad Birds, and not. There's other people in our industry who've never grown out of that.
Right,
They've never
right,
learned their
right.
lesson from that.
They might be somebody else.
Right.
The street person of 2004.
But just the awareness of that is good too, and passing that along to other kids when I was teaching at CalArts, or even just people in our industry,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
trying to pass along, going, look, here's what'll benefit you more: stay modest, stay humble, keep your ears and eyes open, come in on time, leave on time.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't take a lot. but
It
you'll
always
learn a lot.
amazes me that nobody ever hits that, or few. You're one of the few. But I've, you know, as a union rep, you wouldn't think you'd do it, but I do that all the time. Say,
Yeah.
look, you don't want to go to war over this. You don't want to get me involved. I mean, I say this to a lot of people. You don't want to get
Well,
me
you're
involved.
coming at it because of your union connection. I'm just trying
No,
to
you're
tell
you're coming at it from a career.
Right, I'm saying, here's what'll benefit you long term.
Yeah.
If you have this approach and this attitude, I guarantee you'll have more success than this other approach.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But some people are very, thick-headed. They don't want to listen. That's
They
their
want to
way.
do it their way.
Yeah.
And
I'll tell you a story. One kid one of my students, people don't think about this. One of my students applied for a job at CalArts. I said, you should come in, you should take the test. He took the test. He dropped it off, and a couple days later, he told me that he didn't get the job. I went, okay, did you ask them anything after they talked to you? And he said, no. I go, well, you should always ask what they liked, what they didn't like. Can you retest? How soon until you can retest? And he was like, you can do that? I said, yeah, you can do that. Actually, it can work in your favor. So in this case, he did. He went in, he asked them, can I take another test? And they were like, yeah, of course you can. And then he asked for a little bit of feedback, and they gave it to him. And it worked in his favor because he went home, did the test, brought it back. They hired him. And they hired him for a couple reasons. It wasn't just about his artwork. It was because they found out he can be directed. He has the right attitude. It's not that
Sure,
his way is the
sure.
best way. He wanted to produce something that would please them, which is what you have to do in your job.
That's
Whether
right.
you like it or not, you need to do what your
you
director
don't have
or
to agree
supervisor is
with it.
asking
You
you to
just
do.
have to do it.
Right. And they gave him a job, and he's had a long,
Yeah.
successful career. And we still talk about that story and how most people think that, oh, once I take a test, that's it. They don't want me. No, that's
Oh,
not it.
yeah, lack of communication. There was an animator at one of the large studios who had been there for years and years and was making more money than most.
Yeah.
And he came in and they gave him his bonus check and said, and your last week is next week. And it's like out of the blue.
Right.
And he came to me and said, what? I said, well, go to them and say, is my salary the issue? Because I'm willing to drop down to the level of everybody else
Right.
if that's what it takes to stay. And he went back and had a discussion, and they went, oh, you'll do that? Oh, okay. And so that he stayed on for several more years. And they weren't even going to ask him because they thought, well, he'll say no and it's
Yeah,
demeaning, and
it's
we're not
off
going
the
to do that. So
table.
we'll do the really humane thing. We'll just lay him off.
Lay him off altogether.
And it's just this big disconnect between management think and creator think. And
Well, it's also in our industry, there's a problem too, which I don't want to generalize too much, but my observation is that many people in this industry are sort of what I refer to as socially retarded. They like
Yeah.
art and they like to draw, but communicating with other human beings is not
Their strong
best
suit.
Yeah. So you kind of have to push them and encourage them to do that, or force them in some cases to do that. And that's what we find a kindred spirit. You know, when you go to CalArts or someplace, your first thing is you're amazed that there's other people out there like you. Then you get into the industry and you're like, there's even more people who like to, they're grown-ups who like action figures and go and
do
see
the same
cartoons.
thing.
Yeah.
And you walk into offices and there they are on shelves and desktops.
Right.
And,
So that's who you feel like you can communicate with, and then you just get in your little niche and you're
yeah.
So
Yeah.
So anyway, out of that stuff with transitioning from Disney and trying different things, it opened up like an opportunity for new things. I ended up going to Nickelodeon after that, working on Teenage Robot when I came back from New York, and then back over to Cartoon Network on my gym partners, a monkey. But here's another bigger picture that people have forgotten, that it's probably my strongest asset. It has nothing to do with my artistic ability. It's my networking ability. Everything is a network. From the time I went to CalArts, I got to know those people and each production I've worked on. I've created relationships that give me a network that help me or help somebody else. I
Yeah.
find out what else is going on, what's coming up,
Yeah.
what somebody else is looking for. I also find out other people don't want to work with, or how people feel about other people. But the networking has helped because that's what's kept my career going. Finding out what's coming up, what's going on, is there something that I could do on that, or a position that a friend of mine
Yeah.
could fill or somebody else. So I've always been trying to have an awareness of the industry and what's going on. And then an awareness not only what's going on now, current productions, but what's going on with new media, with other outlets, other opportunities to grow the industry.
Yeah.
Because it's not stagnant. I mean, this thing started out on paper with animation discs in little warehouse buildings, and now it's this multi-billion-dollar industry.
On Cintiqs
Yeah,
and with
digital
software and digital and
You're not even editing on film anymore. The whole reel-to-reel thing is ridiculous. Everybody laughs
Moviola
at
is
it.
gone.
Kids don't even know what those are. So
No, well, there isn't going to be any film. There won't be any film.
ever there won't.
There won't
There
be
also
films in theaters. There won't be film anywhere.
there won't be cells.
No,
Remember those things?
it's done.
You won't find very many drawings on paper. So yeah, it's a big change, and it's just the awareness of young people today. You'd like them to have more understanding, more awareness, more appreciation for what got things to where they are now, and why they're here.
Have a little historical perspective.
Yeah, when I was teaching, I was always surprised that people didn't know, kids who were in this industry didn't know names like Tex Avery or Chuck Jones.
There must have been a few.
There was a few, but there was also, if you're at Cal Arts, my assumption is you know these people. They built this industry. And yes, some of them did, but there was many who had never heard of them. So you have to, again, when planning out my classes, I'm introducing them to things I felt is necessary they were
Yeah.
introduced to, like some of these founders of our industry. And reminding them of, this is the fight that got this industry to where it is today.
No, I mean, Brad Bird is a good example of somebody that's very aware of the history of the industry.
Oh yeah. Oh, there's some guys. There's guys that know it way more than me, and sometimes they care about it a lot, maybe a little too much, and get caught up in it too much. But the awareness is what I was trying to push.
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. Have an awareness of this, appreciate it, and it's the same thing about in our industry. There's a lot of people that like to bitch and moan and complain about the industry. And they'll have been in it for like 5 minutes, and they're bitching and moaning and complaining, and you have to shut them up because you have to earn your right to bitch and moan and
Well,
complain.
it's also, and what I tell people is, nobody wants to hear your complaints. Some people will think you deserve what you're complaining about, and the rest don't care.
Yeah,
And so knock it off, because it's better to be positive and upbeat, because that carries you further than going in and going, this is crap. Why you need it?" It's like
I don't
nobody
mind.
cares.
Here's the thing: this is my feeling about that. It's necessary to vent,
It is necessary to
but
vent,
you have to be
but
smart.
not all the time.
Right? You have to be smart about it. Find a friend or somebody who has an understanding. Maybe it's a spouse. I don't know. Vent to them.
Right.
So you get it out.
Absolutely.
It's like therapy. Get it out. So it's out there.
Or go
okay?
talk to the wall, or
But
whatever.
don't take it into your office or into a meeting
Yeah.
and vent to those people. And don't be the person who complains about everything all the time.
Right,
Nobody wants to work with that guy.
right. And that's what I tell
But
people.
there are things that you're going to want to express that you're
There are
unhappy
legitimate
about.
complaints, absolutely.
Yeah. Could be a person, could be a process, whatever.
But just not that to the exclusion of everything else.
Be
That's-
smart about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's other lessons
So,
there.
to wind up
Yes.
on the end of this thing, where have you been recent? What have you been doing recently? And what do you have planned?
Let's see, what can I talk about? So
For the
recently,
next-
currently, I'm at Cartoon Network, once again, Ben 10 Omniverse. We're starting to wrap up season 2 of Ben 10 Omniverse. I'm the supervising director on that project. Where am I going next? I don't know. I've had talks with people at Cartoon Network about projects, staying there and working on projects there. I've had talks with Nickelodeon about working there.
Yeah,
I've had talks with some of the smaller independent studios around town about working
Yeah,
with
yeah.
them on things. So it's a bit up in the air. where I'm going to go next. But I don't have to decide tomorrow, so I'm okay with that.
So how much longer do you see Ben 10 is lasting?
Well, the current run will end into summer. But there is a chance that it could go on more. Again, with the evolution of our industry, the influence of international and how much influence the international market has,
And that makes a huge
it's going to
impact.
drive, if we're going to do more Ben 10s, international will decide whether we will or not. It's not domestic
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
the global world, because that's what our industry is right now.
Yeah.
So, and even there's new opportunities with places like Netflix and Amazon now that never existed in the past. So I'm excited about where the industry is growing to and going to now.
Yeah, yeah.
So we'll see.
And my last question.
Yes.
Your 5 most inspirational, life-changing pieces of animation features, shows that either you worked on or experienced as a youth that impacted you. And if you don't have 5, you can name less.
That's
Or you can
easy.
have more.
So I think the 2 Disney features that impacted me the most would probably be Peter Pan and Pinocchio, just from a storytelling and artistic kind of.
I think
Point of view.
for a crisp storytelling experience,
Yeah.
Peter Pan is hard to beat.
Yeah.
I had Don Bluth tell me, oh yeah, but you know, they had the stage play to go from. And it's like, no, but that's true, but
And from a visual standpoint, I was always blown away by Sleeping Beauty. I mean, I went out and saw cells from that movie, and I saw original cells, and I was blown away with how beautiful the colors still were.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't just like a Technicolor on screen thing. In person, those cells were amazing. So those are amazing from that point of view. On the television side, the Tex Avery stuff, just because it was funny. Funny's good. Let things be funny.
Yeah.
They're still funny today.
yeah,
They're timeless. So all the Tex stuff and his approach.
yeah,
And I remember, slightly more contemporary, I was really impressed with the original Family Dog, when they did that Family Dog with the Brad Bird, Tim Burton, Chris Buck involved Family Dog, the original one, not this series.
right.
That was very interesting to me at the time, and made me think of TV animation in a different way. It can be entertaining and smart, stuff like that.
Yeah,
I'm not going to get into the primetime stuff like Simpsons and things like that, because that's a little bit different, but those were important to me. And I think the other thing is maybe just the experimentation stuff, like this Disney stuff, the Pigs is Pigs and Two Whistle Plunk and Boom stuff.
oh yeah, yeah.
Still, to this day, another thing that just blows me away that I can reference to other people, and they go, oh yeah, that was great. So,
Do you any of the UPA stuff?
I-
Two Whistle Plunk and Boom?
yeah, well, the Two Whistle, that was Disney, the Two Whistle
Right,
Plunk and
that's
Boom.
that's
But
sort
it
of
had
their
that style,
answer.
yeah. But that's what I liked about it. It created a neat hybrid, which was they took people who do full animation, wasn't limited, but they took a very stylistic style and made it full animation, and I thought that's really cool.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that influenced other people later on, like some of the Crudes stuff. Even though it was done in 3D, some of the original development work was very flat, and the idea was, well, what if we took something very flat and it's full? Or another good example would be 101 Dalmatians.
Yeah, yeah.
Taking something very stylistic and full animation. And it's beautiful, it's great. And
Yeah.
and again, that's why animation is what it is, because you can only do it in animation.
Yeah.
That you can't do in live action.
Yeah.
So, so
Well, I think we have straddled the history, plumbed the depths, and climbed the hills. So
wrapped it up.
thank you, Mr. Myers.
My pleasure, sir.